Hi and welcome to this new video. In this tutorial, we will create this awesome Candy Crush React clone where we will have the possibility to match 3 or 4 candies of the same color. We will also create a special candy when matching 4 candies of the same color. We will add sound effects, animations and much more. So if you are excited for this build, make sure to like the video, subscribe to this channel and let's get started. Okay, so let's initialize a new React project. I have already created this project, Candy Crush YouTube. So I will open the terminal. Now I will type the following to initialize a Vite application. So npm create Vite dot to create a React application and working directory. I will choose React, JavaScript. Now let's install the dependencies. Simply run npm install. And now let's run the dev server. Type npm run dev. Okay, let's open this URL. Okay, we have installed our React application. I will put my code editor side by side with the browser. Now open the source folder and let's get rid of the index.css file. Open main.jsx and remove the import. And go to the app.css file and remove all the styling. Okay, I will remove this state from the app component. And let's render a simple h1 for now. Okay. Now let's begin with the creation of the grid of our game. So I will start by importing the images of the candies. For the images, you will find them in the GitHub source code. The link will be available in the description below. So let's import our images. So let's import the images. I will say import blue candy from images blue candy.png. I will copy this line to import the other images 5 and 6. Let's import the green one, orange, yellow, red, purple, and let's import the blank image. There's a problem here. Okay. Now I will initialize two variables for our grid. The first one is the width of our grid, which is the number of the columns and rows of our game. So I will say width equal to 8. We'll also initialize the array that will contain our candies. So candy colors equal blue candy, green candy, orange, yellow, red, and purple. Okay. Now I will create a function that will create the grid of our game. So I will say create board call function. I will have an array random candies for I will loop for e from 0 to the number of candies that we will have in our game, which is width multiplied by width. So we will have 64 candies. So now we will generate a random color using the array that we created earlier, candy colors. So I will say candy colors, the index, and for that we will use mat.random. Mat.random will give us a value between 0 and 1. So we will multiply this value by the length of candy colors to get values between 0 and 5. To do that, we'll say mat.random multiply by candy colors dot length. Mat.randoms will give us numbers, not integers. So for that, we will use another function from mat, which is mat.floor to give us the greatest integer less than or equal to its argument. After that, let's push this generated color in our random candies. After that, I will have a piece of state that will store our candies. So we say candies, set candies equal use state of an empty array. And here I will have an array of objects and not an array of strings. So I will say color, random color. And now let's set our candies with random candies. Now this function, we will run it when our component mounts. So I will use effect. Let's call create board. Of course, this use effect will have an empty array dependency. So let's log those candies to see what we have. Log candies. Okay, as you see here, we have a list of objects that will contain generated colors. Now let's return some JSX to see what we have generated. So inside of our div, I will create another div. I will give it a class name of game. And here I will map our candies dot map, and here I have a simple candy. I will have it here a direct return, so I will have parentheses. Inside of it I will have another div. Let's give it a key. So I will add the index, our map function, to use it as key. I will give it a class name of image container. Inside of this div, I will have our image src equal to candy dot color, and for the alt attribute I will put the same. So let's see what we have. Okay, so we have our candies. Let's now add some styling. So I will start by the body element. So I will apply this background image, say URL, background, you will find this image on the GitHub repository. So I will say background repeat, no repeat, background size to cover. For our app, I will say max width of 600 pixels, padding of 20 pixels, margin auto to center it. For our game, we'll apply a width of 560 pixels, 8 of the same, display flex, flex wrap, I will set it to wrap, padding of 20 pixels, border of 2 pixel dashed, background color of Alice blue, opposition to relative. So now let's style our image container. So it will have a width of 70 pixels. And I use 70 because, as you see here in the game, we have 560 pixels divided by 8 70 pixels. So after every 8 image containers, we'll have flex wrap to the next line. For the height, it's the same amount, 70 pixels. We'll have cursor pointer, and position, we'll set it to relative. Now let's see what we got. Okay, it looks terrible right now. Now we need one more step to set the width of our images. So we'll have width 2. Okay, so now it looks nice. So I will just resize my browser so it fit like that. As you can see here, we have also this beautiful background image, but our game is not centered. So let's see, game container. That's because we have a capital A. So let's make this like that. And now it's centered. Okay. Let's see, we have a different set. Okay. Now the next step is to start with finding our matches. Like you see here, we have 3 candies of the same color, 3 here, 3 here, 3 here also. So the next step is to write some code so we can find these matches and set them to blank so we can increase our scores. Let's do that. So let's go back to app.jsx. And for this tutorial, we'll try to find matches with 3 or 4 candies. So 3 in any row or any column. So let's remove this log here. I will create another check for columns, which is a function. For this function, I will use it to check for rows for columns of 3 or 4 candies. So I will pass to it parameter here that will represent 3 or 4 candies. So for example, when looking for matches of columns of 3, like this one, I can't look past these columns. This is the last columns that we will use to check for columns of 3. Because if we start, for example, from this candy, we don't have 3 columns. When we will start from the candy of the index 0 until this candy. So we'll have 0, 7, 15, 23, 31, 39 to 47. But I don't want to use hard-coded values. So we will have a for loop. We will loop from the index 0, this one, until this one, for the case 3. And if we are looking for matches of 4 columns, we'll stop at this one, so 39. So the formula that we will use is the following. We'll say width multiply by width minus, I will open parentheses, num minus 1 multiplied by width. So let's take, for example, the case 3. We'll have 64, 8 multiplied by 8, minus 2 multiplied by width, which is 16. So 64 minus 16, that we will have 48. So we will loop from 0 to 47, which is this candy. And for the case 4, we will loop from 64 minus 3 multiplied by 8, which is 64 minus 24. It will give us 40, this cell. So it works. It works for even 5 or more candies. So let's continue. To verify if we have a match, we need to check if our candies are of all of them are of the same color. So in the case of 3, we'll have to verify if the first and the second 3 are of the same color. In the case of 4, the 4 of them. So we'll have an array that we will use for our check. We'll initialize it. An empty array. We'll use another loop here, this time G, to loop from 0 until the number that we're checking for. I will push in this array the indexes that I need to check. So const.push I plus G multiplied by width. Don't worry, I will explain this code. So let's take, for example, the case 3 again. If I'm here, I will need to check this candy and this one and this one. And this candy has an index of 0. This one has an index of 1, 2, etc. Here, as each row wrap at the index 8. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And this one will have 8. And this one will have 16. So I will loop from 0 to 2. I will push I plus 0 multiplied by 8, which is 0, and I plus 1 multiplied by 8, which is 8, and I plus 2 multiplied by 8, which is 16, this one. For the case 4, it works also, because we will be checking for this candy, this one, and this one. Okay, after that, I will have another variable to have the decided color that I need to check for, but before continuing, I need to have another variable which will be a reactjs. So let's add the following: current candies equal userref. I will use ref here because I want to modify our candies constantly and then update our candies each 100 milliseconds. So on the creation of the board here, I'll set candies.current equal to random candies. So I will use my ref and say .i.color. Now we need to check if our columns array, the 3 of its elements contain the same color. For that I use every function of the array. So I will say if columns for every element square current candies dot current of the index dot color equal to decided colors. If we found a match, we will set those candies to blank, so we can update our scores and update the game. To do that, I will loop on our columns. I will use my current to set to blank those indexes. G say dot color equal to blank. Okay, so now we need to call this method. For that, we'll go to use effect and we will use set interval to constantly check the game and update the game. So we'll use set interval each millisecond, and we'll use the return method of use effect to clear the interval of timer. So we'll call check of columns of 3 for now, and then when calling this method we will be updating this current ref that we will use to update our candies. So we will call set candies to update our game. So as you can see now, we had a match of 3 that we set to blank. Let's try another one. This is a row. We are looking for columns right now. Here, as you can see here. Now we need to check for columns of 4. As our method is parameterable, we'll use the same, but we need to check for 4 before 3. So let's call it with a parameter of 4. And let's try again. As you can see, we had matches of 4 here, 3. Okay, that looks nice. Now we need to check for rows. So let's create another function to check for rows. We'll say const check for rows equal. The same way we will pass to it a number that we'll check for. And for rows, we'll check for matches of 3 or 4, like this one, this one. The same way, we can't look past this column. For example, for 3, we can't look past this column. This is the last column that we will check for, because after that, if we start from here, we have just 2 left columns. For 4, we can't check past this column. So for that, the same way, this time I will use a for loop. I use width multiplied by width. So I will loop through all of our candies from 0 to 64. But if I'm checking for 3 and I'm on this column, I will continue to not check for it. And the same way for 4. If I'm here, I will continue. So let's start already by defining the list of the elements that I will check for. So for example, if I'm here, I will check for 3. I will check for this candy, this one, and this one. So it's very simple this time. If I'm on 0, it will be 0, 1, and 2. So let's define a rows, which is an empty array. I will use a for loop G this time to num. We'll use rows dot push E plus G. So it will be for 0, 0, 1, and 2. If I'm checking for 4, it will be 0, 1, 2, and 3. Okay? So the same way we will have a decided color, which will be current candies dot current of the current index, which is I, and color. But let's now implement the restriction to not check after this column for 3 and after this one for 4. So the condition is the following. It will be width minus I modulo width. If it's less than num, I will continue. Now let's explain. Let's take, for example, we are checking for rows of 3. If we have the width this time is 8, and I, for example, I am here. So it will have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So 8 minus 5 modulo 8. 5 modulo 8 is 5. So 8 minus 5, it will give us 3. 3 is less than 3. It's not true, so we will not continue. If, for example, we are here, this is index 6. 6 modulo 8 is 6. 8 minus 6 is 2. It's less than 3. So we will continue. So we will not, we'll skip the rest of the treatment that we will write in a moment. So it works. Let's take, for example, this index. So this index is 8. It will have 40, 39, 47, 55, and 63. So this one is 38 modulo 8 is equal to 6 again. We'll have 8 minus 6 is 2. It's less than 3, so we will continue. Let's now take, for example, we are checking for 4. For 4, we can't look past this column. So for example, this one, the index of this cell is 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. It's 4. 4 modulo 8, it's 4. 8 minus 4 is 4. 4 is less than 4. It's not true, it's false. So we will not continue. If, for example, we're checking for this candy, so this candy will have 0, 7, 15, and 23, 22, and 21. So 21 modulo 8 will give us 5. 8 minus 5 is 3. 3 is less than 4. So we will continue. We will not check for this candy. So it works. Now the same way we will have to check if all of our elements, our indexes in rows, all of them are of the same color. So we'll write if rows for every square, our current candies dot current of square dot color is equal decided color. If all of them are of the same color, which means that we have a match. So the same way, I will just copy this code here. We'll set them to blank. Make sure to, I should have also copied the for loop. Okay, let's loop our rows. G and color, we'll set it to blank. Okay, I think we're good. So let's be 4, not 4. 4 rows. Let's call it in our interval. So after checking for columns of 4, we'll check for rows of 4. After checking for columns of 3, we'll check for rows of 3. So now let's test it. As you can see here, we had a match of 3 that we set to blanks, so it works. Let's hopefully check for 4. Okay, this one, it works also. One problem that we have is that our check will also work for colors of blank. So to prevent that, we will have to exclude the check of colors of blank. So for that, we can here add a condition. So I will say is blank, which is if our decided column equal to blank. If is blank, I will also continue. Let's put this inside parentheses. And I will add this condition also for columns. Okay, now we need to update our game. So if we had a match, we need to move the candies down so we can generate new candies, etc. For that, I will add another function. Let's call it move into square below. So when moving our candies down, we need to exclude the last row because this is the last row and we can't move anything anymore. So for that, I will loop. Draw all of our candies. So I will say width multiplied by width minus width. So we can loop from the index 0 until 64 minus 8, which is 56. So from 0 until 55 here. Another detail that we need to handle here is that if our candy is in the first row, we can't move anything down to it. So we need to generate a new candy. So we need to check if we are on the first row. For that, I will have another variable is first row. And to check for it is very simple. We need just to verify if our I is less than width. So width is 8, so 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 are the candies on the first row. If we are on first row and current candies dot current, the current candy dot color is blank, which means that it's blank and we need to fill it with another candy. So if we are on the first row, we need to generate a new one, a new candy. So the same way, I will copy this line here from create board. Random color will give us a new random color. So we'll fill it with this new color. We'll say color is equal to random color, and that's it. We handled our first row. Now we need to handle the remaining rows, except the last one. So for each row, if the next candy with the same index of the next row is blank, we need to move our current candy to the next one. For example, for this row, here we have a green candy and we need to fill the next row with this candy. So I will type the following. If our current candy dot current of I plus width, if we are here, for example, the next candy of the same index is I plus width. If color is blank, I will say current candies dot current of I plus width. When color is set, color of the current candy, and I will set my current candy to blank because we have emptied, and it is as simple as that. So now let's call it after checking for our matches, because our matches will set matches to blank if we could find them. After that, we need to move our candies down if they had empty next candies on the same indexes. So let's call our function and check if it works. Okay, it seems like it works. Let's try again. As you can see here, we have an effect of filling the empty candies. As you can see here, we had a match of a column. So it works. Before moving forward, let's implement scores. So for that, I will add a new state. So I will say const score set score is equal to use state of 0. Now let's add some HTML to represent our score. So I will add a new div to which I will give class name of scoreboard. Inside of it I will have a span score. I will add a b tag to show our score. Okay, so let's apply some styling. Make sure to add these CSS styling to the app, display flex direction column, and align items to center. Now let's copy this class name and apply the following: font size of 25 pixels, padding of 20 pixels, margin bottom 10 pixels, background color the following: FE76 B4, color to white, border radius to 15, and set border to 2 pixel, solid and white. Looks nice. Now let's connect the scores to the fact that we find matches. So let's go. I will create a function to update my score. Take parameter of num. It will call set score of a prev score. It will add prev score. It will add to it the num that we passed to the function. Now let's call this function. So we will call it here. If we find a match, we'll update our score by the number of the match. The same way for rows. Now let's check. As you can see here, our score is now updated if matches are found. Try again. Okay. Now it's the time to add drag and drop functionality. So for that, let's go to the HTML. And our div will add some attributes to make it draggable. So for example, draggable, I will set it to true. We'll also add on drag start that we will set to a function drag start that we'll create in a moment. On drag over, we won't use it, so we say e.prevent default. The same way for on drag enter and on drag leave. It should be on drag enter, on drag leave. We'll use also on drop that we'll set to drag drop, on drag and we'll set to drag and. So let's create those functions. So const drag start, the function that will take the e event, drag drop and drag end. To keep track of our dragged candy and the candy to replace, we will add two more states. So let's add const candy dragged. It will represent the candy being dragged. Set candy dragged equal use state of null, and we'll also have candy to replace. Set candy to replace. Okay, now we need to connect those states to the drag functions. So for example, on drag start, we will have the element being dragged inside the e event in e.target. So we'll call set candy dragged e.target, and on drop we'll have the informations on the destination candy or the candy to replace. So we'll set the candy to replace to e.target. The one thing that we need that I need to tell you here is that we start by drag start, and the drag drop is called when we release the pointer of our mouse, and after that drag end will be called. So inside of drag end we can log the state of the dragged and to replace candies. So let's do that. Let's log them. Let's say candy dragged and candy to replace. And let's check already if our candies are draggable now. So as you can see, they are. So let's inspect. For example, drag this one. As you can see, we have this one. So that works as expected. Let's close the console. Let's continue. Let's add some attributes that we need to update our game. So the first one is the data index to use it in our calculations. The index will be our index. Data is RC, in which we will store our source of the image or also the color, candy color. Let's see Okay, as you can see here, we have data src and data index in each candy. Let's go back to drag and remove this log. We will need the indexes of the candies being dragged. So we will have two indexes. So let's say dragged or candy dragged index. We parse int because the data index will be a string, so we need to get it back as a number. So parse int of candy dragged of get attribute of data index. We need also the index of the candy to replace. So I will say candy to replace index, and the same way it will be candy to replace dot get attribute data index. One thing here to verify and check is that when we are dragging candies around, we need to drag them by just moving one step forward or backward or top or bottom. So we need to have a list of valid moves. We can't, for example, take this one and try to drop it on this one. We need just to check for one candy on the left, one on the top, on the bottom, and on the right. So for that, we'll have an array of valid moves, which is equal to the following indexes. So for example, if I'm dragging this one, I can drag it to one step on the left. So it will be the candy dragged index minus 1, which is this one on the top. So the index minus width, candy dragged index minus width, one on the bottom, one on the right. For example, if I'm dragging this one, it will be +1. The next index, candy dragged index +1, and one on the bottom. So candy dragged index plus width. So now we need to check if the candy we're trying to replace or to drop on its index is on this list, so we can continue. Else, if the index is not on the list of valid moves, we need to stop the treatment. So to check for that, we say if it's a valid moves dot includes this index. If not valid move, will return. So let's check that if it works. We say if we get past this return statement, which means if it's a valid move. So I am a valid move. So for example, as you can see, I am a valid move. Let's try this one. It's a valid move also. So we have a problem here. So let's check. For example, I'm here, I'm trying to put it on this one. So we have a problem here. Okay, let's check. It's none. Why is that? Okay. Okay. We don't have data index on the image. Okay. So I forget to add a property on the image tag. So to fix that, go to the CSS file and find .game.emg and add the following pointer event to none. That should fix it. So let's try again. Open the console. Let's try, for example, a valid move, which is this one. I'm a valid move. Now try to this one. Still a valid move. Okay, it seems that we still have a problem here. Oh, it's the MG. But data index is not. Okay, let's try to find. Oh, it's dates. It should be data. So it's my bad. Go back to app.jsx and let's put here data. Now, one more time. Clear the console. Try a valid move. It's a valid move. But this one, it's not a valid move, finally. But this one is a valid move. Yeah. So let's continue. We'll remove this log. So now, if it's a valid move, we need to change the color of the candy to replace with the color of the candy dragged. So for that, simply type the following: current candies dot current of candy to replace index dot color is equal to, we'll copy that. This index will use the candy dragged index, or not that. Let's use actually the data is RC that we have on the element dragged. Data is RC because we need to change also the candy dragged index color to the color of the candy to replace. We need to switch colors between them. So here candy dragged index equal to candy to replace is RC. So we changed our colors. Now we need to run our checks. So we will switch colors between them and we will run our checks to see if we have any matches. If we have one match, we will clear our dragged and to replace candies by setting them to null. If not, we will switch back the colors to their early state before dragging the candies. So for that, we need to verify if we have a match. So let's go back to our checks. And if we have a match, for example here we need to return true because we need to call this function check for a match. Same way here, return true. So we'll say is a column of 4. We say check for columns, we'll pass to it 4. 3 more checks is a column, is a row of 4. We'll call check for rows. If is a column of 3, pass to it 3 here. Check for rows of 3. So if one of them is true, so if, for example, this one or this one or this one, we'll set our candy drag to null and set our candy to replace to null. Else, let's switch back colors to their earlier state. So I will copy this. We say current candies, candy to replace index from the candy to replace element, and current candies dragged index to the candy dragged element. Now basically our drag and drop functionality is functional. So let's try this one. Okay, that works. Let's try 4. As you can see, it works. The score also gets updated, so it works as intended. Let's try this one. Okay. Let's try, for example, a case when we wouldn't have a match, for example, this one. So nothing changed. So it works as intended. With that, our drag and drop functionality is operational. Now our next topic is to handle special candies. And by special candies, we'll have just one for now. Tell me in the comments if you want me to create a part 2 of this tutorial to handle more complex candies. To handle special candies, we will need to add a property to our candies. Until now we had just the color, but now we need to add a property called modifier to handle, for example, vertical stripped candy or horizontal, and we'll also open possibilities for future candies. So let's go to the JSX, and here in place of using candy, I will use object structuring like that. We'll have color and modifier, which is the property that we will add. So here change the data src to color directly, and the same way for the emg tag. And let's add another data which will represent the modifier. Modifier equals to modifier. I will also add here, I will change it to add string interpolation. So change that like so. And here just add the modifier like so to use it as a class, because we need to add special styling to make it look like a special candy. So it still look like the same. Now we need to modify our code. So we will initialize our candies. Modifier will be undefined, but that's okay. So let's look for start from the top. So check for columns. When we will set it to blank here, I will also need to set the modifier to empty the modifier, because if it was a stripped candy, we need to make it just a blank one. So here modifier is equal to blank. The same way here, make sure to replace columns with rows here. Okay, so in our check for columns of rows, if num is greater than 3, which means it's 4 or greater, we need to create a special candy. So to do so, we'll start by check for columns for now. It will be the same for check for rows. Before changing check for columns, we need to add one thing on drag and our check. We need here to pass the indexes so we know which candy we will replace by the stripped one. So for example here, candy to replace or candy dragged index and candy to replace. For 3 we don't need to pass these indexes, so go for check for rows for now. Here we expect also indexes to initialize to null if it's not supplied. So also check for columns. When we have a match after this, before trying to set all the candies to a blank, we'll add a variable here to check for special candy index. We initialize it to -1. If num is greater than 3, which means that we are on the matches of 4 and more, we'll have special candy index is equal to columns, which is the list that we use to check if we had a match, dot find index of one of the indexes we're checking for is included inside of the indexes. It's in the case where we are dragging trying to make a match of 4. So if indexes, make sure to use a interrogation tool because indexes is null in some cases, so includes call candy. So we say special candy index is equal to 0. And now when we are looping to set all of our match to blank, we'll exclude the special candy index. We'll say if g is equal to special candy index, we'll say take this and current candy colon g of modifier is equal to horizontal, because if we are checking for columns which are like this match, we will have, if we are checking for columns, we will have a horizontal special striped candy. If we are checking for rows, it will be vertical. So horizontal, okay, and we will use continue here. So we will not set the same color to blank and empty its modifier. We'll exclude this index. So the same way for rows. So let's go here and we will have our special candy index. And I will also copy this check inside the for loop, but this time we'll check for rows. If our g is equal to special candy index, it will be vertical this time. Okay, so let's refresh our game to see. It seems that we have a problem. Let's check. Okay, columns. I must, yeah. So it's not columns here, it's rows and row, Let's refresh. We still have a problem. Okay. Special candy index is not defined, of course. I need to. That's the problem with the copy pasting. You forget things. Okay, it should be fine now. Okay. So let's check, for example, if we switch this, we have a match of 4 here. So if we switch this purple candy with the red one, we should have a special purple candy. So let's check if we don't have, so we have a lot of undefined here. Well, that's, we'll fix it later. So let's check. Okay. We still have purple. Let's check if it has. Okay, it has vertical. So now this one is a special candy. Let's fix the undefined on the JSX. So I will say that if modifier is not null or empty, now modifier, else have empty string. Now let's see. Okay, it's much better. We have vertical here. Let's see which one. Okay, it's this one. Now we need to apply some styling. I will use the before and after elements to just make add 2 dashes to each special candy. So let's go to app.css. So we'll copy this class and don't worry about all this code. You'll find it on the link on description, the link to the source code on GitHub. Horizontal. If it's horizontal, we'll use the before and after pseudo elements. So we'll use content empty position to absolute. We'll check if image container is relative. Okay, it's relative. Top 30%, left of 10%, height of 5 pixels, width of 80%, and background color of white. Same way of for the after, because we have 2 dashes, so it will have a top of 60%, and that's it. Now I will copy these two to handle the vertical. It will be 2 dashes aligned vertically. So I will say vertical, and for vertical we'll have top of 10%, left of 30%, width of 5 pixels, the height of 80%. Let's copy all of these styles and paste them here. We have a top of 10%, left of 60%. Okay, as you can see, we have a stripped candy here. It's a simple trick that I use to show special candies without adding other images, because we had to add 6 more images. Not just 6, but actually it's 12, because we have 2 dashes like that and 2 dashed lines aligned horizontally also. So it's a simple trick that you can use using before and after pseudo elements. So let's check. Hopefully I can find a match. Okay, I have one here. So as you can see, it works. The next step now is to add special effects when matching with a special candy, because as you know, if we make this match, it should empty all these columns, not just like that. So but that will be the next topic that we are going to handle. Before moving forward, let's go back to app.jsx, and we need to take care of changing the modifier also whenever we are trying to change the color. So for example, here in move into square below function, we need to set the modifier to an empty string, because we are creating a new candy. So let's do that. I will say dot modifier equal to an empty string. The same way when we are trying to move a candy to the next row. So for example here, let's copy and paste it here also. Whenever we are trying to set the next row color to the previous candy color, we need also to change the modifier of that row. So current I plus width modifier equals to the modifier of the previous one, like that. Let's go also to drag and function, and I think here, when we are trying to set the candy to replace index color to the candy dragged src, we need also to change its modifier, data modifier. Okay, let's do the same for the candy dragged index. We will say candy to replace dot get attribute data modifier. Okay, and after that, if the match we tried to create, we couldn't produce a match, we should also revert back to the previous state. So do the same here, current index dot modifier equals to candy to replace dot get attribute data modifier, and candy dragged index dot modifier candy dragged data modifier, just like that. Okay, Now let's go back to the place where we are creating matches. So let's begin with check for columns. So whenever we are checking for a column of four candies of the same color, what we have done is that we create a special candy here, and then we continue to not set it back to blank. What we will do now is whenever we are creating a column of four candies, if one of the candies contained in the match has a modifier like vertical or horizontal, we'll empty all the column. So I think I will do that and then explain. So I will add an if here. We are in the check for columns function. So if and else. If the candy contained in the column is not a special candy, we'll just set it to blank and empty its modifier. So if candies current candies.current of columns g dot modifier is not null or empty, we will check if a candy is vertical. We'll call a function that we will create in a moment, set call to blank, and we'll pass to it the index of the candy, set call to blank. Okay, and if it's a horizontal candy, we'll set row to blank. So let's create those functions here. Const set call to blank, call a function, and set row to blank. Let's begin with set call to blank. So we'll take an index, and here, for example, let's try to find to make a match of 4. Okay, let's try again. Okay, for example, we have this one. So the goal of this function is to set all this column to an empty column. So to set all these candies, these indexes, to an empty, to blank. So to do that, we need to find the index of the column. For example, here the column 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So let's try, for example, for this case. So we'll try to empty all this column, the column with the index 1. So if I'm here, okay, the index of this cell is 0, 8, 16, 17. 17 modulo the width of the grid, which is 8. So 17 modulo 8 is equal to 1. So let's do that. Const, we'll say const col is index modulo width. Now I will loop through all of the candies that have the index 1. So all of them. So I will say for lit I is less than width, because we are looping through the width of our grid, which is 8 by 8. So I will try to copy the two statements, okay, like that. And here it's not current, but the call plus I multiplied by width. Let's replace that also here. Okay, so now we did that for the columns. Now we need to test it. Okay, let's continue with the row before testing that. So for the rows, we'll have also an index. If a candy has it is a stripped candy with with a horizontal modifier. This time we need to set a total row to blank. It's the case when we have similar this candy, for example. So we need to set all this row to blank. So we need to find the index of this row, or maybe even the first candy. So to do that, we have the index, for example, this case. So this candy has the index 0, 8, 16, and 24. To find the index of the first element of the row, we need to divide the index by the width. So for example, 24 by 8 will give us 3. And we will use also math.floor to get the integer which is less or equal to our result. So I will say const row is equal math.floor index divided by width. For example, for this case, this is the candy with the index 24 divided by 8 will give us 3. Math.floor will return 3. So this is the row 0, row 1, row 2, and row 3, 4, 5, 6, until 7. So for this row 3, we'll loop from this candy until this one. So I will write a for loop again. I will start from row multiplied by width less than row multiplied by width plus width. So in this case, we'll start from this index. Will give us, for example, our case, it's 3 multiplied by 8, which is 24. We loop from 24 until 24 plus 8, which is 32, less than 32. So basically it's from 24 through 31. We will do the same. So let's copy those lines. Say this time is just I set to blank. Okay, we call those lines for the check for columns. We need to do that for check for rows also. So let's copy this if statement and place it right here. Else we'll place those lines in the else and make sure to change the array. It's not columns but rows. Rows. It's the same, but make sure to change here also. Now let's try that. So for example, we have an example here. For example, I will try to make this match. So I will drag this candy to here, and we should get rid of this entire column because we have a candy with a vertical modifier. So let's see if it works. Okay, as you can see, it works. Now it's the same. Okay, I will try to find a horizontal modifier. Okay, we have one here. So let's try to find a match. Okay, we have. So let's try. We should get rid of this entire row. Okay, that works. So now we need to update the score by 8 for our example. Whenever we are setting an entire row or an entire column to blank, we need to update the score by the width. So to do that, it's very simple. Let's go to our functions, newly created functions. And after the loop here, I will update the score by the width. Let's do the same for set row, just like that. Now let's try. So we have 12. Here we have a stripped candy. Try to make a match. Okay. Now we have 31. When I will when I will drag this candy to here, we should get 3 plus 8, which is 11. Okay, maybe we had another match, but I think that works. Okay, now what I want to add is whenever I am dragging a special candy and dropping it over another one, which means a special candy, I want to empty the row and the column. It's like creating a special combo whenever we are trying to drag one special candy over another one. So for that, let's head out to drag end. Let's add the following. So I will say check of two special candies, and to check for that, it's very simple. We'll say if the current candy to replace dot modifier and the candy dragged index is also a special candy. So if that's true, we will set row to blank with the index of the candy that the destination candy. We will also set the column to blank, and after that we will return to stop these statements from getting executed, because this is a special combo. As you see here, it's very simple to make combos, for example, and extend this functionality to handle other scenarios for special candies. So it will be a little hard to try that, but let's hope we can get this one to next to this one. Okay, here, yeah, and well, maybe you can get lucky and be able to see this. Let's move forward. So now the next step is to add sound effects. For that, I have downloaded some sound effects from the game, so you can get those sounds from the GitHub repository. Make sure to have them under the public directory. And let's go to the index.html. I want to add to call them in audio tags, so I can play them for example, to add sound effects whenever I am making a special candy, or setting an entire row to blank, etc. So for that, let's add 3 audios like that. src is equal to slash sounds slash, for example, negative switch dot ogg, and make sure to add an id for each one, because we will use the id to get them. So it will have the same as the name. Let's copy this audio tag, paste it 2 more times. Negative switch, this time it's line blast. And for the third one, it's stripped candy created. Okay. Now head back to app.jsx, and I will create a new function. I will call it const play sound, that will play an audio by getting it through its ID. So it will call function that will take an ID. I will say document dot get element by ID and play, to play the audio. Okay, it's good enough. Now I want to go to the place where I'm creating special candies to test the sound. So let's go to check for columns here inside this condition, and call play sound and give it the ID of, let's copy it from here. It's the stripped candy created. Okay, let's do the same inside check for rows. Okay, now let's test that. Okay, so let's hope we can find. Okay, now let's test if our sound works. As you can see, we had a sound effect when we created this candy. So let's try another one, like this for example. Okay, that works. Now let's do the same for when matching a special candy with other candies of the same color. For example, here I want a different sound, for example, to notify us that we are setting this entire column to blank. So the same way, it's very simple this time, because we already have two functions for when we are setting an entire row or column to blank. So let's play this sound, and this time we will play this one, line blast. Okay, let's do the same here. Okay, now let's try. For example, like that. Okay, we can do here. We should hear another sound like that. So it works. For the third sound, is for when we try to, for example, to drag this yellow candy over the blue one, but that's actually a bad example, because that will make a match in it works. For example, let's take for example the blue candy, and we'll try to drag and drop it over the purple one. That will not produce a match, so we will play a different sound. For example, is what we called a negative switch. Let's see already. Okay, nothing works, but we want to play a sound. So for that, let's go to drag and it's in here. It's on the case where we set back the attributes and the color to the previous state before dragging. So let's call play sound and give it a negative switch. Okay, let's try that. For example, this one with this one. As you can see, if you can hear. Okay, good. Now for the last functionality that I want to add is to add some animations. For example, when setting an entire row to blank, I will just add a line to cross the line, for example, to cross the entire row. So for that, I will create a new function. Actually, I will create two more functions, one to animate a row and one for animation of a column. So let's begin with a row. Say const animate row. We'll have the index of the first cell of the row. Inside of this function, I will create a new div that will place it on absolute position to the grid, depending on the index of the row. For example, if I'm trying to empty all this row, I will add a div here. So I will say const element is equal to document.create element of a div. I will add a class to this div using class list. We'll add to it class of animate that I will use for styling, and then I will position it with style of left equal to 0, and dot style top is equal to, I will use string interpolation. We'll say row, it's the index of the row multiplied by 70, because remember each image container has a width of 70 pixels. As you can see here, width and height of 70 pixels. So this is the first row and this is the 7th row. So if I'm here, for example, I will have a row of 5. So 5 multiplied by 70, 350 pixels. We should give us a line of here, plus the height of the candy divided by 2. So I will say plus 35. And then we have also a padding in our game container. As you can see, padding of 20 pixels. So to make it look nice, we should also take that in consideration. Plus 20, and then add pixel. Initially, this div will have a width of 0 and the height of 5 pixels. Okay, and then I will append it to the game container. To do that, I will use document.query selector class game dot append element. It will get appended. Let's apply some styling to see something. So let's say that to app.css. First thing is to verify if our .game class has a relative position, because we will this is the parent of our created div. Okay, it's the case. Remember, we give to this div a class of animate, so let's use that. We say .game animate. It will have position of absolute, background color of 99CFFF. It's a blue color. And then I will add also transition for a little animation. So it will take 100 milliseconds. I will use ease out for animation. Okay, so let's call this function whenever we are setting an entire row to blank. So let's go to set row to blank and call it after updating the score. So I will say animate row and give it the index of the first candy of the row that we calculated here. So let's give it row. Now let's try to find a horizontal special candy. Like that. I will try to use this green. Okay. Okay. Now let's use it. We should, when setting this row to blank, we should get our div created and placed over this row. Okay. Nothing happened. Let's check. Okay, we have a div actually. At the div. Oh yeah, it has a width of 0. If I put here 100, okay, it should look like this, but we'll use animation and it should disappear when the row is set to blank. Okay, so it works. Okay, let's continue. Let's go back to animate row. To animate the div created, I will use set timeout. Take a function and the duration will be 100 milliseconds. I will add a class to animate our created div. So I will give it a class of animate row, and then I will call again set timeout to remove the div, just like that. So I will say here lm.remove. Now whenever I'm adding animate row is to change its weight. So let's head to app.css. I will say game animate with a class of animate row. If it has this class, I will set its weight to 100%. I have to use important here to override the inline styling of the div. Now let's try again. I don't know if you had the chance to see it, but a row got emptied. Okay, for example here, you just have to, okay, again, and okay, this one for example, we should see a div over this row, as you can see. Okay, it works. So now let's do the same for the column. So it will be basically a similar function, but this time it will be animate call, which takes a column, which is the index of the column, for example 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And we want to draw a line from here to here. So the same way we will create a div, we'll give it a class name of animate. This time it's not left but top to 0, and left will be set to call multiplied by 70. It's the same calculation. The height we set to 0 and do it to 5 pixels. And then we will append this line to the game. Again, here I will add a different class, animate call, and after that I will remove it. So let's add this class to the styling. Let's say game.animate.column, and this time I will set the height to 100 pixels and add important. Let's call animate column when setting a column to blank. So let's call it after updating the score, animate call, and give it the call. Okay, let's try again. So we have a row. It works as expected. And try to find a column. Okay, so okay, we have the chance to see this combo. As you can see, we had an animation for the column or for the row. So this is the special combo that we have right now. With that, I think we implemented all the functionalities for this clone. If you have any doubts or questions, you can write them below. And if you want me to make a second part of this clone where I will handle more candies, and especially the color bomb, which is created when making a match of 5 candies of the same color, just tell me in the comments below. Make sure also to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I hope I see you in the next one. With that, make sure to play around. You can modify the code, play with it, and don't forget to tell me the highest score that you will get playing this game.